Hi, and welcome to our program today. My name's Jim McGinnis, and today we're going to talk a little bit about God, faith, and where it takes you. You see, in 1997, God took me on a special trip. I became born again, but first let me tell you who I am. I serve at the Tabernacle in Orchard Park at 3210 Southwestern Boulevard under the direction and the leadership of Bishop Tommy Reed. I've been there for quite a few years now, and I run the day-to-day operations. But before I came there, I was just like you, sitting at home, waiting to hear. Waiting to hear from who? Waiting to hear from God. You see, in 1997, a friend of mine, Mike, came over to the house. He asked me if I knew God and had a personal relationship with him. I said, Mike, what are you, crazy? No, I didn't know God. I didn't know God like Mike knew God, and I wanted to. So what happened? Mike took me through a journey with God. I went out searching for the answers of my life, searching for the answers that I didn't know. What I found, the answers were in the Bible, right in front of me. All I had to do was pick it up. You see, when I was doing that, I also learned about faith. Faith. Hebrews 11:1 says faith is something we can't see, taste, or feel. In other words, do you trust in God? Do I trust in God? Does the person next to you trust in God? Does your mom trust God? And what do we trust God for? You see, faith is something that we look to God and say, God, I have faith that you can get me through this. Faith is not understanding what's going to happen, but understanding God will be there for you along the way. You see, as I took that journey in 1997, that journey took many roads, many twists in the road. My wife passed away. You see, I was at a low point in my life, a low point that I had to have faith in God to believe God had something better for me. You see, when that happened, I turned to God even more. I didn't turn away. I turned more towards God. So as we went along, we continued to walk with God. You see, what happened next was a friend of mine took me to the Tabernacle in Orchard Park. He introduced me to a person there who was able to guide me through the books of the Bible. Show me exactly who God was. Show me exactly what God could tell me to do. And more importantly, where God was to help me through it. You see, I was still searching even though I was in church. I was in church reading the Bible, but I still hadn't heard God's voice. I would sit there every day and look up at the top of the inside of the church and say, God, I just want to hear your voice. What does it sound like? Again, turn back to Hebrews 11:1. Hebrews is a tough book to understand, but once I got to read it, you see, did someone have faith enough in God to build an ark? Did they have faith enough to build a wall around a city? I learned and read about those books in the Bible, and I said, boy, you know what? My faith is growing in God. More importantly, it was tested. As my faith was tested, I accomplished more in my life. Let me give you an example. My kids were away in Texas, and I was unable to see them for quite a long time. I had to grow in my faith to understand they would soon come to me if I prayed to God, asked for His guidance, and allowed God to work in my life. And guess what? God answered my prayers. My children are in fact at home right now watching this program. It's an amazing time in my life. I'm proud that they're able to do that. But more importantly, I have faith in God that it might not happen in my time, but it will happen in God's time. You see, what happened, as I did that and became more involved in church, more times my faith was tested. Not tested in a negative way, tested in a positive way. You see, what happened next, this is where the story turns. You might think, who's Jim McGinnis? Jim McGinnis is sitting at a TV station right now, talking to you personally. Do you know God? Do you know God? Do you have faith in God? Can you reach out and talk to Him today? Just a short time ago, approximately a year ago, I received a call from a very good friend of mine who was asked to do Extreme Makeover in the city of Buffalo. Now, you want to talk about faith, this is what happened. We got a call on October 12th to do a show that everybody knew about. You probably have seen it on TV yourself. You've seen it, you've heard it. It's an ABC program that talks and builds new houses for people of deserving houses. Well, when David called me, I said, David, ABC called us? I went home and I prayed that night and I said, God, if this is you, give me the faith to understand what's about to happen. The next 4 weeks of my life were turned upside down. You see, I thought I had faith, but I didn't. I thought I could question God, but I didn't know how to. I thought I had heard from God, but yet I hadn't heard his voice. When you hear his voice, it's an amazing time. It's an exciting time. More importantly, it's a great time. What happened next was during the next 3 weeks, we had to lay out a strategy. We had to lay out a strategy of how we were going to go into this community and build a house. And as we did, we continued to look over the neighborhood. So when Extreme came back, wow, what happened? You see, with faith, we knew God would answer our questions. How could we go into the city of Buffalo and build a house? How could God be a part of building the house? How could God help us build a house? But more importantly, I felt like I was being asked to build an ark and didn't understand what rain was. You see, when we went into that city and that community on the west side of Buffalo, we had no idea we were just going to do one home. We did 29 projects. Let me say it again. We did 29 projects. But here's where the faith came in. You see, when we did 29 houses, we didn't have any material. We didn't have siding. We didn't have roofing. We didn't have nails. We had no fencing. We had no concrete. We had no trees. But we prayed every day and we had faith. Let me tell you right now, do you have faith? Are you watching this program just by coincidence and sitting there with the clicker and just happen to tune in and say, who's Jim McGinnis and why is he on TV? God's speaking to you right now. God is asking you, do you have faith in him? God is asking you, do you question him? Do you have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ? Do you know where you'll be when you pass away? Do you know if you're going to go to heaven? Do you know if your family's going to go to heaven? More importantly, if you're sitting at home right now and you're dealing with a tragedy, do you have faith that God can give you the strength to get you through the day? I'm talking about bodily strength. I'm talking about strength so strong he could move a mountain. I believe you do. I believe you do. Let me tell you what happened. You see, when we went to Extreme Makeover, and on Monday we showed up to build a house, we still didn't have the strength nor the will to get the product. Tuesday, we didn't have the supplies. But at Tuesday at 3 o'clock, the supplies started to show up. You see, it was in God's time. It wasn't in Jim's time. When God tests our faith, he tests our ability of time. His time. Sometimes he has to teach us patience. Sometimes he has to teach us control. But more importantly, he has to teach us to believe, to have the faith, to understand, to walk out in God's faith. One of the sayings we were saying as we were going through the project was, I was telling David,